I'm asking you in general terms. If you put out something which is made up of untruths, mixed up with truths, that would also lend itself to a story that's ultimately false, or a position to be taken as ultimately false.
I would not then characterize that as false in this context when we are talking about what's fake and what potentially might come under legislation. I think there are inaccurate stories, there are skewed reporting, there are just downright bad journalism. There is a whole range of stories that are problematic across a whole range of publications and journalists ourselves constantly argue and debate whether this story was written well, whether that story was written another way, who wrote what, how, constantly reading your own story, then reading a competitor's byline and comparing it, going, why didn't they write this? Why didn't they do it this way? This is constant amongst journalists that I know. But I think I would shy away from saying just because some things might be inaccurate, some things we might feel is untrue, then it becomes a false story.
No, I think, Ms. Han, I think you know that there's a difference between what one might write artistically or journalistically, and you might form a different way on your style of writing and presentation. But that's quite different from making up a story that is made up of truths and untruths and passing it off as a story.
I mean, what do you mean when you say untruths, like outright fabricating quotes?
That either that or statements which are reckless, no regard for the truth, not checked.
Again, reckless and no regard for the truth could again be a matter of interpretation. So if you're talking in a scenario where, say, a journalist claimed to go to an event that they actually did not attend and made up quotes
or a quote from someone who's a phantom?
Yes, or just flat out made up quotes, then yes, that journalist's credibility should be in the dirt, and I don't feel sorry for a journalist like that. But if it was a matter of, oh, why didn't you include this report or that report? Why didn't you quote this in full? Why did it get truncated? Then I think that's very different from saying that someone's fabricated something.
You would also accept that it is important as a content provider to set out the facts and the basis on which you're setting out an opinion as far as possible. Would you agree?
Yes, to try to provide fact, yes.
Right. And applying that to the Human Rights Watch report, that would also apply. If you want to take a view or advocate a certain position, then as far as possible, the facts on which you form that view should be set out fully. Would you agree?
I believe they set out their
No, but
facts.
would you agree? I mean, whether they did or did not is a matter of view, but would you agree that that should be done?
Yes, they should set out facts and substantiate their claims.
Right. So in the context, for example, of the Alan Shadrach case, one should set out fully the facts on which the alleged scandalizing of the judiciary was done. Would you agree?
I think as the way that journalism works, that you would never fly with saying, I have to list out all the allegations, all the charges, because then your editor would just cut all that out because they said you're taking too much time.
You would need to set out, obviously you've got to determine what you can do, but you've got to set out within reasonable boundaries, facts which would not lend your story to an unreasonable conclusion, not formed because of a lack of appreciation of the underlying facts.
But you see, this here we are talking not about fabrication, but about editorial choice. And sure, we can hugely disagree over one's editorial choice of what to leave in or what to report or what not to say. But, again, that I would really shy away from calling that a false story. So, for example, during the run-up to the Administration of Justice Protection Bill, I was part of a campaign to highlight the problems of the bill, and I made a number of public statements about the bill, and there was a Straits Times story that talked about the bill and its passage, and that online there was some unhappiness, and it simply referred to me as Facebook user Kirsten Han, rather than setting out the context that I was a very active member of a campaign that criticized the bill. So should we say that that was a falsehood? I was unhappy with that characterization of suddenly going from being an active member of the campaign and therefore a stakeholder that could be quoted to becoming just a Facebook user. But I would not at all call that Straits Times story a falsehood. I would dispute that journalist's editorial choice. And I believe that journalist said his reason for it was that there wasn't enough space. And I disagree with that choice, but I wouldn't say it was false.
No, that's a question of description. What I'm saying to you is if you're trying to advocate a view, then I think the facts, the complete facts which support or detract from that view ought to be set out so that your readers can judge.
But
That's
again,
a fair statement,
that is a matter of editorial choice, because as journalists, we cannot list every single fact that's related
I
to
know,
the issue.
don't repeat that, but I know. But the point is, within that context, you must also know what facts you should set out, which would lend your story or your conclusion to a credible landing, and also provide the basis for people to form a view.
I'm sorry, but it's not that I'm deliberately trying to be difficult, but I do have to repeat again that it is a matter of editorial choice, and that is the answer that I can give. I mean, I cannot change. My answer will not change.
Are you saying it's outside of your control?
No, I'm saying that it's a choice that every journalist and editor makes in the creation of a story.
And that choice.
And it can be disputed, and it can be criticized, but I would really be very cautious of then saying, oh, this is false or this is fake news.
But that choice must be driven by trying to set out as full as possible an objective or fair basis on which the conclusion of the article of the story is based.
Well, so that's a question of intent then, in which each
That's what you would
journalist
set out to do.
each journalist have to speak for himself or herself. But
For yourself?
For myself, I try as much as I can, but I make editorial choices as well, and that's an issue between me and my editor when the story gets worked on. And of course, I've seen many people who disagree with my editorial choices, and they should be free to hold that view.